Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Kavitha Ramachandran, Head of Business Development and Client Management, Continental Europe at Maitland, as she shares her thoughts on how financial services could benefit from embracing the key attributes of Indian music. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex and the City, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with me today Kavitha Ramachandran. She's a Luxembourg legend. She's head of business development and client management for Continental Europe at Maitland. A big welcome to you, Kavitha.
Oh, Rachel, very pleased to be on the program, and thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I've known about you for many, many years. And as I said, Kavitha, you are a Luxembourg legend. So love to know a little bit more about who you are and where you came from and how you ended up in Luxembourg.
So, Rachel, first time I've been called a legend, so let me try and live up to it. So I grew up in Chennai. It was called Madras in those days. So that's where I went through all my education. I did my graduation. I did my BCom, qualified as a cost accountant. And then, interestingly, when I was looking to do my postgraduate studies, I did a course at National Institute of Fashion Technology. That was an MBA. It was more focused on apparel management. And at the same time, I had this interest of learning French. And together, it gave me an opportunity to come to Paris as an exchange student and spend, one of my a really interesting time here as a student. Exposure to Europe, living on a shoestring budget was fantastic. When I did that, I actually went back to Chennai, and I was thinking I was going to be in the apparel business when I met my husband-to-be. And obviously, when we decided to get married, one of us had to move, and I decided to do that, which brought me to this wonderful country. And, fascinating as it was at that time, a center of, financial services. And I sort of dived deep straight away into it with the sort of the financial background or education that I had, and dwelled, deep into the funds industry, which was starting off, or had started off and started thriving at that point in time. So I worked with my first job was at Liberty Hermitage. It was a fund administrator. And then I joined the Maitland Group at that point in time, more on the corporate accounting side. So it gave me an opportunity into a slightly different side of financial services. And moving on, it was through some strategic moves. There were some acquisitions made by Maitland at that time, which helped me get more into the fund services area. So it was quite new for the company, and it helped me learn and move along. We were probably pioneering at that time to outsource some of the services onto the technology platform at that time with, all the regulatory permissions. And, it was a wonderful experience, which then brought me from, more what we call the operational side of things into a client-facing and the business development area. And it was at a time when the alternative funds industry was picking up, the introduction of SIFs at that time in 2007. It sort of helped me focus in that area, and evolving into that was the introduction of AIFMD, which then helped me to put together a business case and run the entirely, the regulatory process with the CSSF. Quite an interesting and challenging process that was to help us set up our AIFM in Luxembourg, which then, became a sort of a pan-European offering for third-party management company services. So I think that's been the trajectory of, evolution of myself in the financial industry over the last, 25 plus years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been at Maitland for 21 years, haven't you? Crikey.
True. Yes, in different roles, but absolutely.
Wow. So in your career, Kavitha, has there been any leaders in the financial services industry that have really stood out? Is there anyone that you'd like to highlight and say, wow, they were amazing leaders?
A lot of people, inspire me. I mean, I, name a few. I think politically, people like Obama and Nelson Mandela, of course, not related to financial services. But if I were to look at financial services, one person does stand out, and that's Indra Nooyi. And obviously, she needs no introduction, in terms of the role and the positions that she's held. And interestingly, she comes from Chennai. So I always relate to, and someone with I'd say, similar background. So when you see someone like that sort of evolve up the corporate ladder, I think that's one of the, it's truly inspiring.
Absolutely. And so, Kavitha, what motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning to do the job that you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think, I'd definitely like to make a difference. I think that's the important thing. I mean, I guess one is, and it's important because, there are different things, you have, and how do you make a difference? I mean, it could be with people, for example, clients, for example, they're the ones I feel, who help to set the road in terms of how you need to deliver the service and, work yourself through this. And I think that's one, important reason, finding solutions for our clients, working with teams. I think, people are an integral, part of everything that we deliver. And, it's important that we are able to sort of work with them and, draw motivation as well as motivate people as we go through that. So I think, making a difference, as well as having a form of, if you can leave a sort of a legacy, I think that's something I would like to I try to work towards.
Absolutely. So I know that you're very heavily involved in Alfie, which is the Association for the Luxembourg Fund Industry. In your opinion, what do you think the industry can do more to foster growth with young financial services leaders, Kavitha?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's very topical question and a topical issue that needs to be dealt with. I mean, Alfie, they have done leaps and bounds over the years, and you can see how the association has not only helped foster the usage growth, but also in the alternatives, and that continues. I mean, it's interesting, you're coming up to 10 years plus of AIFMD, and you can see how the industry has, clearly transformed. And with the young generation, I mean, it's quite interesting. And, you hear this a lot. People say they don't want to go into the financial, industry. There's other things which are, obviously more attractive. And I think it's more and more important that, the focus is given to that generation. And I think with Alfie, there's been, a lot of initiatives taken to bring this into fold. I think at all points in time, they're trying to bring in younger speakers to be able to express their views, have them in panels as keynote speakers. I mean, it's a wealth of information you can actually learn from the young generation. And I say that because, I interact with people of that, that age, both, personally and professionally. And one thing that has come out of it and is actually to have after a number of discussions, it's actually a conference which is focused on the younger generation. So both having them participate as audience, but also run the show as developing panels, topics and subjects which are going to interest people of that generation. And that's due to be in October, towards the end of October. And I think it's a great initiative where we have people from the youngsters in the industry coming in, participate, form the subject themes that they want to talk about, get the speakers together. And Rachel, we're really looking forward to having you speak, in that conference. And I think one thing I'd like to say is, we both know Germain Burgeon very well from Bank de Luxembourg, and he's been quite instrumental in getting this topic started. And I think that has now evolved into, having this conference set up. And the hope is that this then becomes an annual event where we can have more participation and sort of generate that interest that the asset management industry needs.
I think it's a fantastic initiative from Alfie, and really looking forward to working with you on it, Kavitha. So you have a daughter, I believe.
Yes.
Does she know what you do, Kavitha?
Yeah, sure. Now she does. I think it started with, saying mom goes to the office and sits behind the computer to actually understanding what I do. And obviously she's 22. She's a young adult, and she's she's majored in economics and statistics, and that's the area she wants to be. But she has got quite a bit of exposure into the financial services industry here in Luxembourg, having done quite a few internships. So she understands the fund industry, and interestingly, she did a stint at Loft, which she quite enjoyed, as well as PwC. So I think she's got a fair idea of what I do during the day.
And what do you think the industry needs to do even more of to attract even more young talent to the industry? Because I remember ourselves that we had a gentleman who had a first-class degree in economics, and he wasn't so interested in the industry. So what can we do to make the industry even more attractive?
Yeah, I think it's it boils down to sort of change, and I think we need to change, or the industry needs to change with time, and it has done so. But I think it's important to sort of, or maybe even make things simpler and get people to understand what it is. The benefits. I think we maybe assume that people understand what the industry is about and don't do much in terms of sort of talking about the basics. And I think maybe just addressing the basics and getting people to understand and have that exposure. It's not complex. I think many a times we feel, there are too many things to understand in the financial world, but maybe it's trying to keep things simple, break it down to the basics, and, get people more involved. I think that would probably, be one of the things that I'd like to do.
Absolutely. So harnessing the collective is what we're really talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had a magic wand, Kavitha, and you could change something in the industry to make the industry better, what would you change?
One thing, we say this, there's obviously regulation and regulation. I guess it's a necessity, but I go back to what I said earlier, is to try and make this and keep it simple, make sure that we do what we need to do, rather than layering it up with complexity, is what I would think would change. You need people to understand why they're doing things and do it, do it properly. And I think there needs to be a understanding of the final goal in terms of what you're achieving. So great, you should have procedures, processes, all for it. But I think, the absolute basic, information that you needs to be collected in the simple format and used effectively. But maybe that's a very simple message, but keep things simple is what I want to say.
Keep things simple, love it. So Kavitha, in your own career, if you were to sort of highlight, what are the two leadership traits that have brought you your own success?
Look, the one thing I would say is tenacity, and perseverance. I think those are very important, and commitment. I think it's very important. For me, I think those are, the two sort of main things which I would always, try to have. In addition to, I guess. For me, these two would be the main thing. And the other thing is, I always say, you being naturally curious is also helpful, because it sort of helps you look at things in a slightly different way, maybe, do things out of your comfort zone. So, you need to step out and try things. I guess that would be what I would highlight.
And if there were any of the people who are at the conference in October listening to this podcast, and you were giving them some counsel some mentoring, what would you counsel a young financial services leader? What would be your best advice for them?
One thing I'd always say is, especially with the young people now, I mean, there's too many distractions and lots of things to do. And you're, constantly, your mind is sort of jumping from one thing to the other. And something I quite enjoy, and I try to do it as much as possible, is dream a little bit. I think if you dream, it gives you a different perspective, ideas to work with. And, it's just let your mind run around a little bit. Sometimes you need to think of the impossible, and maybe, some things will happen, which is not the impossible, but something close to it. So I think I enjoy it, and hopefully, that helps.
Oh, I love it. What's your dream, Kavitha?
My dream, I wish I could tell you. Actually, there's one thing I want to do is I want to actually do a documentary, a travel documentary. So one day I hope I can achieve doing that.
Oh, fantastic. And where would you go?
I don't know. I got lots of places to go to. I have a long list, so I need to shorten that down. So maybe one day, retirement plan.
Absolutely. So I see you very much as somebody who's an educator, and I know that in your spare time you're all involved in an education charity. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that, Kavitha, and what you're doing with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something very close to my heart, and I was introduced to it right at a young age. So we help a school in Chennai. So this is my hometown, and I was exposed to it from my school days. And my mother actually introduced me to it. She's a retired professor now, but she was introduced to the school in her teaching days. And it's actually, it's a school for the lower, children from the lower economic group. And it's a primary school. And over the years, we've actually raised quite a bit of there's been funding which we've got both from Luxembourg as well as India. There have been a number of organizations involved here and individuals, and we've helped to build the school building, which is quite important, for the children to come in and have a place to learn, and obviously helping the teachers. So, the school has evolved over the years, and, you can actually see the children go out, sort of pursuing secondary and tertiary education. And we've met some of the children, some of them as children, now adults, in various field. So it's very fulfilling to see, us being part of this. And interestingly, my daughter is now involved, and most recently, she's been involved in, or we've all been involved in setting up a computer lab to, introduce the children into the digital world. And these are kids who are going to make a difference tomorrow. And I think education is one of those foundations and the platforms for them to grow from. So it's something very close to my heart, and we hope to continue to grow in that area.
Fantastic. And I know the other thing that you're heavily involved in, Kavitha, is you have your own radio show on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's actually a Sunday morning, so quite early. So bang at 9 o'clock. Yeah, so I've been doing the show. It's on Radio RS, or local radio, but the show gets beamed globally because it's live streamed. And it's to promote Indian classical music. So I do a lot of classical, but try and make it have a bit of a fusion folk as well. And it's I've been doing it for the last 13 years now, and it helps me to do something completely different. And at the weekend, it's very different. It sort of also, I've learned the world of music as we go along, things that I didn't know before, the genres of Indian music, how it links to, Western music. So I play quite a bit of fusion music in there, have artists come and talk on the show, and not only artists, but also, people from different walks of life. We try and sort of mix the music team together along with what they want to speak. So I find it fascinating and a brilliant learning experience. And every week is different. So I think I've been learning every week for the last 13 years.
I think financial services could learn from Indian music, Kavitha?
It's a very good question. And I actually, haven't thought of this before. So it's a good one to think about. I would say, it's improvisation. Because if you look at the way Indian music is, there's obviously structure, rigor, learning, and so on. But when the artists actually come on stage to perform, each bring in their own individuality, and they actually, improvise. They learn from each other, and it happens on the stage. So it's amazing to see that kind of improvisation. And the other thing I'd definitely say is energy, because there's a lot of, energy brought together through performance, the way they perform together, the beats of the music. I mean, you can call it what. And I guess if you move slightly away from the traditional music into Bollywood, I mean, that energy is sort of magnified.
Absolutely. I can't wait to have the financial services industry dancing to your tunes, Kavitha. Thank you for being.
And Rachel, I hope to have you on the program.
Listening to your music. Thank you so much for being with us on Flex in the City today.
And thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. Wonderful chatting to you.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.